Hey, my name is Jerome Kevin. In today's topic, we'll be looking at three specific films that showcase the true nature of war: Saving Private Ryan, Escape from Sobibor, and Hiroshima. My thesis statement: war films are excellent at expressing the horrors of war, particularly World War II, by displaying conflict, survival, escape, soldier camaraderie, sacrifice, the futility and inhumanity of warfare, the repercussions of war on society, and the moral and inhuman dilemmas highlighted by war. The film Saving Private Ryan is a film set during the Allied invasion of Normandy, towards the end of the Second World War. It is noted for its violent depiction of war, particularly its depiction of the Omaha Beach assault during the Normandy landings. For those who don't know, the film is about a group of rangers tasked with a dangerous mission to rescue a soldier deep behind enemy lines. But we'll only be looking at its broad depiction of the early stage of the D-Day invasion at the beach of Omaha for this review. Some background information on D-Day. On June 5, 1944, a large portion of Europe had been under Nazi rule for over 4.5 years, and the continent had been devastated by terrible warfare between the Allies and the Axis power. As a result of Hitler's battle and invasion, several countries were ripped apart. Though the Axis was still running strong, it was beginning to break, and Russia had greeted the Germans with great counteroffense to the east of the continent, with the Germans withdrawing and the Soviets following them, chasing them back south. The Allies had driven the Germans and the majority of the Italians out of North Africa, who were allied with the Germans. As they are forced back to Italy, the conflict intensifies. The terrain was very rough, giving the Axis power an edge over the Allies. A second front was now required to bring the conflict back to Germany, and to do so, the Allies had to invade the mainland. Unfortunately, Hitler's Atlantic Wall, a complex of hardened concrete bunkers with artillery machine gun positioned guarding nearly 2,000 miles of coastline from Norway to Spain, stands in their way. Their wall was proclaimed indestructible by Nazi propagandists. Despite its reputation for its strength, the Allied leader Eisenhower was forced to put it to the test. With that being said, it brings us to the opening scene of the film Saving Private Ryan, where we see the landing on Normandy shore. Previously, there were five beaches chosen, and America would take two code-named Utah and Omaha. In the hours leading up to the attack on the beach, a massive airborne drop was conducted, and the paratroopers' objective was to delay any German counterattack before a beach stronghold was established. On the 6th of June 1944, Operation D-Day began. We are then taken to the Omaha Beach landings where the film began. The opening sequence is one of the most horrific scenes ever produced for films. Much of what you see in the sequences occurred. The little details in the film, in particular, shows a lot about how many men felt as they approached the coast. Small details such as soldiers vomiting and seasickness underline the difficulties that the soldiers encountered as they approached the coast. As they reached the beach, it was evident that most men were nervous. There were several incoming artillery bursts that even killed thousands of soldiers on the spot. It was truly horrifying. It was a gruesome scene. Thousands of soldiers died immediately upon entering the shore, greeted with machine gun fire and artillery rounds. Many of them did not survive, but the few that did pushed forward in an effort to claim the German front line. The combat on the beach had been raging for several hours, and many Germans were running out of ammunition. A small group of men succeeded in breaking past the German line. The enemy's resolve to fight was then weakened after a fierce firefight, allowing the Americans to capture the beaches and end the Battle of Omaha. Before I finish this section of review, I want to mention a particular scene that occurred that captured my attention. This scene was significant because it accurately illustrates the dark side of the war where the Allies committed atrocities identical to those committed by the Germans. This reveals not only how vicious the battle was, but also how accurate it was, with soldiers from both sides killing surrendering opponents. The two soldiers who were shot by the US soldiers were Czechoslovakian soldiers, not Germans. Most likely, they were POWs compelled to fight for the Germans. For those who don't know what a POW is, it's prisoners of war. This small details exemplifies the minor things that occurred during the battles of Normandy and any other battles during World War II, when multiple soldiers were shot even if they surrendered.
Sugar Cane, Sugar Charlie 3, say again, Dog 1 is open. Send in the dozer. I'm waiting here to tie in my flanks. Open. What? What? I'm sorry, I can't understand what you're saying. What'd he say? What'd he say? Look, I washed for supper.
Escape from Sobibor is a Holocaust film about the wholesale slaughter of Jews by the Nazi extermination camp at Sobibor. On October 14, 1943, a year before the invasion of Normandy, one of the greatest successful escapes by Jewish prisoners occurred in all of World War II, with 300 of 600 prisoners successfully escaping. Camp Sobibor was a Nazi German extermination camp created and managed as part of Operation Reinhardt. It was in the woodlands near the village of Sobibor, in the general government zone of German-occupied Poland. Sobibor, being an extermination camp rather than a concentration camp, existed only to slaughter Jews. Within hours of their arrival, the great majority of Jews were gassed. Those who were not slain immediately occupied and compelled to help run the camp, and few survived for more than a few months. Sobibor was the fourth deadliest camp after Belzec, Treblinka, and Auschwitz, killing between 170,000 and 250,000 people. By today's standard, Escape from Sobibor is a comparatively moderate movie. There are beatings, tyranny, and hatred, yet nothing is ever too gory. Though it was a modest film, it demonstrates how Jews were handled and mistreated in the camps. At the start of the film, we observe a large number of Jews who were deemed worthless by SS commanders and were then sent to gas chambers destined to be killed off. Everyone from women, children, and elderly. Those with particular work abilities were kept alive and assigned to specific roles inside the camp. The helpful ones were sent to certain places to work on specialized chores, such as manufacturing garments and chopping wood to build houses for the Germans, and etc. In one of the scenes, we see a fatigued Jewish guy who falls while working and is immediately whipped on spot by a German soldier. The German camps were notorious for torturing Jewish people to the utmost, from not feeding them to overworking them and mistreating them as anonymous objects. Most were dressed in numbered prisoner uniforms to dehumanize them. Those who tried to escape were captured, lined up, and killed on the spot, as examples to the rest of Jews. It was truly brutal.
Avenge us! Fire.
There have been several attempts to escape the German Holocaust camps in the past. It has been proven that many escape attempts were made. However, not all were successful. As I already mentioned previously, those who attempted escape were executed on the spot by guards. It was a challenging challenge for those who had plotted escape while in prison. At the end of the film, we were shown the escape. The camp was closed down following a prison insurrection. The insurrection was planned in two stages. During the first phase, teams of inmates were to kill each of the SS officials secretly. In the second phase, all 600 inmates would gather for evening roll call and walk out the front gate to freedom. However, the scheme was unsuccessful when just 11 of the SS officers were killed. The inmates had to flee by scaling over barbed wires, fences, and fleeing across a minefield while under intense machine gun fire. Around 300 of the 600 captives escaped from the camp successfully. The film Escape from Sobibor does an excellent job of depicting the harsh, cruel reality of the war, in which Jews were discriminated against and transported to death camps as a result of the German hatred towards them. The video depicts the majority of how Germans treated Jews and how the Jews plotted their escape in the Camp Sobibor, one of the most deadliest camps to ever exist. During World War II, 1939 to 45, an American B-29 bomber dropped the world's first deployed atomic bomb over the Japanese city of Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. The explosion killed an estimated 80,000 people instantly, and tens of thousands more died subsequently from radioactive exposure. A second B-29 detonated another A bomb on Nagasaki 3 days later, killing an estimated 40,000 people. In radio broadcast on August 15th, Japanese Emperor Hirohito proclaimed his country's unconditional surrender in World War II, in citing the deadly might of a new, most merciless bomb. The movie does an excellent job of showing the result of the explosion and how it changed everything in Japan after. The explosion wave destroyed windows for 10 miles and maybe felt as far as 37 miles. Moreover, two-thirds of Hiroshima's structures were destroyed. The thermal pulse started hundreds of flames, resulting in a firestorm that burned everything within 4.4 miles of the ground. Strong rain began to fall in locations to the northwest of the city about 30 minutes after the explosion. There was black rain, contained dirt, dust, soot, and extreme radioactive particles that were swept into the air during the explosion and fire. Even in regions far from the explosions, pollution occurred. It was truly a horrific day for Japan during both Hiroshima and Nagasaki explosion. It was a turning point in the war also, where the Germans began losing their allies, especially Japan, which was a major supporting figure in the Axis power. With Hiroshima's demise, the leader of Japan declared surrender, thus bringing the Pacific War to its end. To summarize, the three films I picked were not without historical inaccuracy. In fact, all three of the movies had significant mistakes. I picked these three major movies because, in my opinion, they best depicted World War II and its harshest realities to an audience that had never encountered war. They showed the struggles of war, the crimes, and the consequences it had. These three films, in my opinion, did an amazing job of depicting our past. Whether realistic or not, the one thing remains constant. War is one of the harshest and most difficult and brutal period in human history. Thank you for your time and thanks for listening.